The UK one.
Looking for stories that are fresh and new? Dark fantasy, humor, space exploration, time travel, cyberpunk, alternate history, and more. They're in the L. Ron Hubbard Presents Writers of the Future anthology from 24 award-winning authors and illustrators, plus art and writing tips and bonus stories. L. Ron Hubbard Presents Writers of the Future. Buy your copy at galaxypress.com, Amazon, or wherever books are sold.
Cyberpunk. All right, welcome to the Church of Mabus. It's Friday night, 7:07 p.m. Central. Listen to United Public Radio. We got Wham here with us tonight, co-hosting.
Hey, how you doing?
And tonight's guest, Robert Earl White, and had a UFO situation in his neck of the woods, the backyard, and we're going to talk about that. But a few things that I want to talk about. I got Fred Anderson from Sweden. He's coming on.
Cool.
October 6th.
Very nice.
He sent me a bunch of alien black box stories because I had an encounter with the 3 aliens with the black box, and he loved to hear that story and the cat jumping at him and them vanishing. So he sent me a bunch, and I just got this book from Shannon LeGros, and he's coming on the 6th. So
excellent. I told you.
Here's the thing with some guests coming up, Wham. A lot of them are Jay nights, but lately Jay can only do a show once in a while. So on particular ones, you may want to sit in, or if he's not here at all, whatever you want to do. But I'll show you the schedule.
Well, just send me the schedule. I mean, I kind of like having some of my Fridays off, you know.
I understand.
But send me the schedule, and I'll see what I can do.
If there's particular ones you want to sit in, you can.
Absolutely.
Not, I got Wild Trees and Bobby Dizzle they'll sit in. They don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Wild Trees is about to sit in on a couple Bigfoot shows. Next week's a dude with those funny, weird B movies and stuff. He's on YouTube about like weird Bigfoot movies and stuff. But let me get to the next thing. Let's see. What was the other thing? Oh, I talked to Stephen Flowers today. And,
you told me about that book.
And he doesn't like technology in a lot of ways, so I was like, I'm just going to call him. So I called him on the phone, and he did you look at the cover for his new book?
It's like a horror book or something.
It's like a history. It's called Gothic Meditations at Midnight. And keep an eye out for this book. He's coming on in October, Gothic Meditations at Midnight. And I'll just read the little blurb or whatever. Gothic Meditations at Midnight is part memoir, part history of classic horror and science fiction films. Most of it offers unique, esoteric, and interpretive takes on these films. And it ranges from Dracula to Nosferatu to Phantom of the Opera. And it's just him breaking this stuff down and some of the occult symbolism that's in a lot of this stuff.
That sounds fun.
And Edgar Allan Poe. And there's all kinds of stuff. H.P. Lovecraft in it. But that's going to be a good one. And one more thing, and we'll get started. There's a guy, and I want you to, if you can, check out AM Inc. Publishing. And that's AMInkpublishing.com. He may be giving us our final guest for October because, I always make Halloween crazy. And this guy puts out books with, like biographies that authors write with stars who play people like Jason from Friday the 13th. Like there's a Kane Hodder biography or whatever. What is it? Autobiography if it's about you, or I get it mixed up. But
it's if you've written it, then it's an autobiography.
Okay.
If somebody's written it about you, then it's a biography.
I think they're biographies, but everyone's involved. But another weird one that's coming out, the guy that played Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre has a biography. Gunnar Hansen, I believe is his name. But he's basically going to come on, and I told him you can have that date and do whatever you want with it. So it should be a good one for sure, a weird one, that's for sure. So I like to keep the horror going for Halloween.
Yeah, for Halloween. And
we mostly do paranormal, but sometimes we have like I've had Joe R. Lansdale on about Weird West, which is like horror Western. He's like the granddaddy of all that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it. So we like to get weird too. We always get weird, but Robert Earl White, it's great to have you here, and I want to hear your story and share it with everybody. And it definitely sounds very, very fascinating. How would you like to begin?
I really appreciate coming on, especially being down in Louisiana. The last time I went down there after Hurricane Katrina hit, my church group, I was about 16, 17 years old. I went down to New Orleans, Biloxi, Mississippi. I paid for other people to go down. I went there, worked until I got blisters on my hand, helping people that lost everything, and the insurance companies weren't helping anyone after that horrible hurricane. But I just want to say, after going down there, seeing these people with absolutely nothing and seeing the light and love just coming out of them, some strong people down there. And since then, I've had such appreciation and an understanding of the good-hearted people down there that, they care a lot more than just physical material. They're good-hearted, people in tune with the universe, caring for one another. And a big shout out to everyone down in Louisiana. So with that being said, a little bit about me before I get into my UFO crash story that happened in 1991. I grew up here in South Jersey, across from Delaware. I got the Delaware River, Delaware Bay, in between New Jersey and Delaware. That's right about where I am, in the very bottom part of the state. It's nothing like North Jersey. We have nothing, no cell phone service. I grew up hunting, muskrat, growing vegetables. We would go out in the creeks and get muskrat traps, all that stuff. So a real country style living. And a lot of people think of New Jersey, they think of like Jersey Shore. Trust me when I say that's not where I come from by any means. I grew up.
Sounds like Georgia. That's where I'm from.
I've had friends from North Carolina. They come up and they go, "Whoa." They come to the area. They're like, this reminds me of, Alabama. A lot of people around here call it the Alabama of South Jersey. Maybe you Louisianians will get a kick out of that joke right there. But we're pretty backwoods people. And, but yeah, I grew up here, single mother, moved around a lot, lived in every town, in every county, whatever. Later on, I became a pastor, and then I was in a professional heavy metal Christian band. We got signed, toured all around the country. The band was called I Am History. Our album was Visions on CI Records, coming from Lancaster. I went to Bible college in Gettysburg, the Gettysburg Master's Commission, became a youth minister and a pastor. But my main thing was my band. In later years, started going into church. A lot of things happen and different doors open up, and I found myself living in the Middle East for 2 years, teaching English, studying Islam, and learning about Sufism. And once I started studying that, with my Christian background and studying the Quran and all that, obviously I already knew the Pentateuch. I studied Judaism. I've studied Mayan. I'm also Native American on my father's side, so I have my culture's belief of the Abenaki, or in French, Abenaki tribe of New England and Quebec in Canada. My great-grandfather and many other ancestors were chiefs of the tribe. And I've tried to learn as much as I can. I've done a lot of things. After being an English teacher in Turkey and Samsun on the Black Sea, directly south of Crimea, when Russia took over Crimea, I was living over in Turkey. That was happening in my backyard. My house was right there on the Black Sea. No one said anything. My family here in America had no idea what is going on. And with that being said, it's just shocking. It's such a big deal now because I was over there saying, what's going on? I had a lot of Russian friends, a lot of Ukrainian friends that came to Turkey to live and work. And I love all people. People are wonderful. Governments, they're all the same as well. I prefer people over governments any single day. Wonderful people. I can't say the same for the governments, but I really got to see a different side of the world, being in the Middle East, learning that culture, and living in Mesopotamia, seeing sites far beyond Göbekli Tepe. I've been there, and so many other ancient sites in Turkey, places that are 12,000 years old or older, the birthplace of Abraham, etc. It's just insane, the ancient civilization of the Hittite. I lived in like their capital, Hatashua, in their language. And it was like a lost empire that wasn't rediscovered until like the late 60s. So there's so much history over there, especially biblical history, and just going over there being one with the people, seeing their love, connecting with them. It was absolutely amazing. I came back to America. Things weren't as I thought they would be. This was around 2015, 2016. I was over in Turkey for 2 years. I came back. I got a job. I was a warehouse manager for a commercial door and frame company. And for 6 years, I was doing that. And unfortunately, my mother got really sick and she passed away. But during that time, 2 months after she passed away, I finally found evidence after, at this time, 30 years of searching for evidence about my family's UFO crash case, which my mother that passed away was a part of. I finally found the evidence. It took me 30 years, but my entire life, my mother and I, we would talk about it. I would tell close personal friends, never went public because I didn't have the evidence. But I always made a promise to myself, if I ever found evidence, I would shout it from the highest mountaintop and I would tell everyone about what happened to my family. And it was a big burden to carry for so many years. And that's why I'm sharing it now. But just a little bit of my background. Just a little bit.
We appreciate it. And when did the event happen with the UFO?
Yep. So it's a big story. Got a lot to say. So
I understand.
It happened April 21st, 1991, 10:18 p.m. at night on a Sunday. This was in southern New Jersey, within 2 miles of the Salem County Hope Creek nuclear facility. There was a creek that was on the backside of the nuclear facility, which was built in 1977. This is 1991. The creek directly behind Hope Creek Nuclear Salem County Power Plant ran directly behind our house. So there was my house and my aunt's house directly next door. And there was a road, and we had a very thin tree line that was in the backyard. Beyond that tree line was the Lower Alois Creek, hence the name of the UFO crash incident. It's known as the Lower Alois Creek incident. Now, this creek had an old wood bridge that they had tar and one car at a time would go across, one of those old bridges. There was that bridge, and it was a road, and on the left side of the road coming from our house, it was nothing but foxtails. You know that, being from, Louisiana has a lot of foxtails and cattails, I think you call them down there. I'm not sure the name.
And I'm looking at the MUFON case you sent me, the paperwork now. I'm going,
oh, yeah. So it was really marshy, a lot of mud. Like if you walked out there, even if you had waders on, you would sink right into the mud. And it was a pretty wide creek, about 25 foot to 30 foot wide creek, especially where the bridge was. And they built the bridge at one of the points that is a little bit more narrow. The rest of it's very wide. So this is where this all went down, directly behind our house, April 21st, 1991, Sunday night at 10:18 p.m. My aunt that lived directly next door, my Aunt Booty, she was 38-year-old single mother. She was getting ready for bed in the upstairs of her house, and she went into the bathroom. And as she was using the bathroom in her second story, looking out her bathroom window, above the tree line behind her house, about a telephone pole or two above the tree line, there was a very long triangular craft, not a perfect triangle by any means. It was a very long, almost kind of like a spade. It was very thin and very long. It wasn't your standard triangle. It wasn't a perfect triangle, not TR3B for everyone out there that may be into this stuff. This was very different. On the tips of it, there was 3 blue lights. And in the center of it, there was a blinding white light. The material of it looked black, almost like a meteorite. It looked like a rock more so than a smooth down finished metal material that we would expect to see from like our rockets or our aircraft. It seemed very natural and organic, like it was made out of some black material. Now, the cloud coverage and obtaining documentation, the cloud coverage this night was 1,200 foot. It was raining the night of this incident. So to let everyone know, people say, how low was this thing? Like I said, it was a telephone pole or two above the tree line. We were looking at it on a 45. The cloud coverage was 1,200 foot, so it was definitely under 1,200 feet towards the ground. It was much lower than that. That's just where the clouds were, and we wouldn't have been able to see it if it was above the clouds. So my aunt sees this craft just hovering there. It's the size of a very large black helicopter. If you've ever seen a military helicopter up close, they're actually pretty big, like the big black ones. Imagine kind of that size from our perspective, and it was pretty big.
Okay.
My aunt sees this craft just hovering there above the tree line, completely silent, no sound coming from it. And the only reason we knew it was triangular was because of the 3 blue lights that were on the tips of it. And that white light that was in the center, it was unlike any white light we've ever seen. It was more like a plasma, is the closest thing I could describe to anyone. I've never seen a light like it, but that's just my educated guess on what this possibly could have been. So my aunt goes back into her bedroom, 1991, before smartphones and all that. She picks up the landline off of her next to her bedstand, calls my mom next door, who was watching a Phillies Cardinal baseball game with 2 of her girlfriends. My mom was 22 at the time, single mother, and she was with 2 of her friends. They were fairly young as well. One was a little older, but they were out the night before and they were just hanging in and watching the baseball game. So my mom hears the phone ringing, and my mother, she goes to the kitchen where we had our house phone on the wall, and our kitchen was in the back of the house facing towards the direction of this craft. So my mother picks up the phone, and it's my aunt next door, and she says, Beth Ann, there's something in the backyard just hovering there. Look. And my mom shouts really loud, oh my God, what is it? At this point, my mom's 2 girlfriends hear the commotion of my mom freaking out, saying, oh my God, what is it? They get up, and what do young girls do? What is it? You know, all the commotion when there's something going on in a small country town. Everyone's knows, they know everything that's going on. So the 2 girls go running through the house screaming, what is it? At this point, I was upstairs on my bed, and my bed was towards the back of the house. I had a window in the center of my bed, and if I stood up on my bed, I could actually see out the window. And I heard the commotion and all the adults running towards the back. So I saw this too, but no one wants to believe a 3.5-year-old child. I was 3.5 years old when this happened. I was just at that age where you start to comprehend things. And I cannot tell you the kind of damage this story kind of left on me. It really confused the crap out of me. No doubt about it. But so I saw this as well, but I'm going to tell it from the adults' perspectives. I was a kid. Just to be fair, I'm a guy that stands behind evidence and not fantastical stories. I'm not here to sell entertainment or to make a Hollywood movie or write a book. I'm just here to let people know what's really going on. So with that being said, my mother, her 2 girlfriends, I'm watching this, the neighbor next door. Later on, there was multiple police reports. 2 other callers called and reported seeing this. And about an hour north, around 2:00 in the afternoon, there was another police report of someone seeing the same object, 2:00 in the afternoon, when the crash happened at 10:18 p.m. So there are multiple police reports. I've recovered all this information, military transcripts, everything. This is legit. This is a real UFO crash story. So we're all watching this, all right? We're all watching it, trying to figure out what it is. How could something that big sit there so still? With a helicopter, they call it the leaf factor, where something kind of sways like a fallen leaf. You know what I mean?
Yes.
When it's hovering there, like when a helicopter hovers there, it's not perfectly still. There's a little. This thing was perfectly still, like eerie. Like it's abnormal to see something so large, so big, completely silent, just there as like unnaturally still. I don't know if I could hold my hand that still, unlike any sort of aircraft we've ever seen. The whole incident took place around 5 to 6 minutes. To give everyone a time frame, as we're watching this, all of a sudden, number one question a lot of people are probably going to ask or comment or whatever is, If this is a UFO and these advanced beings coming from other parts of the universe, how could they have crafts that would come all the way to Earth and then just crash? And I need to make this point before I tell you what actually happened. They don't just crash. There are directed energy weapons that our government special access programs, unbeknown by Congress and Senate, that they're investigating now. We have weapons and technologies to take UFO crafts down. They don't
Believe
just
it.
come here. They're thousands of years, but a microwave, an EMF, a neutrino detector, etc., different sort of frequencies and radar transferring and transmitting radars, not just tracking, can cause a lot of trouble for certain kind of craft out there. So with that being said, I just want to make that point. It's a great question a lot of people ask. No, they don't just come here and crash. Of course not. That's
I've had
silly.
several pyramid situations where I've seen craft, and I don't know what they were, but anytime someone tells a story, and with yours, it's like I start remembering mine. It's like as you were describing it, I started like having flashbacks of seeing them. I actually saw several come out of a hole in the sky with my mother, and she said, "Oh my God, Jeffrey, what is that?" It was like a portal, and several came out of it. This was in Georgia. And then another time I saw one over some power lines with a friend, and a white light came out of it towards us. And I swear I don't remember anything else. He doesn't remember it at all. I remember it plain as day. But I understand with the pyramid craft, but I don't know what they were. It could be ET, could be Black Ops. I don't know. I just don't know. But
I'm going to need you to come on the show, my show sometime, because one of the things I love about what you're saying you don't know. And the fact you're saying that, I actually believe you, because the people I've talked that have actually encountered these things, we don't have explanations. The frauds, the phonies, the storytellers, they'll write books on this thing, and they'll tell you it was this alien or that or this or that. And I've found the most credible people, when they really see something for real like you did, we really don't understand. And by no means do I understand what I saw or what I'm seeing today. But I really want to hear more about that. That's wow. I'm gonna have you on the show. But to get back to the story, so we're watching this craft, and all of a sudden, I said there was 1,200-foot clouds in the sky. And as we're watching this, a beam of light or a ball of light, I don't know if it was a beam or a ball of light. It happened within a second. It came down onto this elongated triangular craft, and the second, almost like a second before it hit, it happened all simultaneously. But before it hit, red and orange sparks started shooting out the side of this craft. Then all of a sudden, it exploded right behind our house. The outskirts of the craft exploded like a normal aircraft would explode. Trajectory probably going 150 yards to 300 yards. The explosion was so large, and at the 45, we were watching this craft. I explain it to people. When you see fireworks for the first time, and you think the fireworks going to hit you, but you don't get hit by fireworks, but you're watching it, you're like, oh, I'm going to get hit, but the pieces don't hit you. Yeah. That's basically what it happened to us. We were flinching. We thought our house was going to get hit with debris. It didn't happen, but we thought it was. And more importantly, the core. Remember that white light I told you in the center of the craft? The outskirts of the craft exploded like a normal aircraft. That core, that bright white light, it actually sucked itself onto itself. And then what was ever remaining of that core after it sucked itself into itself shot directly down to the ground. Instantly, my mom hung up the phone. She called 911 and reported that some sort of aircraft. She was smart enough to say that it, she wasn't going to say it was a UFO. She knew no one would have took her seriously. She just, as far as we were concerned, some sort of aircraft just exploded behind her house. Someone had to perish in an explosion like that. We were terrified. We were shaken up. All of us that witnessed this, multiple witnesses, she called 911. And what happened after that has been known as the Lower Alloways Creek incident. And after that 911 call, that's when stuff, we thought the scary part was seeing a craft explode. That's not the scary part.
So what?
There's
Who
things
showed
worse.
up? Who showed up to this thing? There had to be. It was a military and God knows what.
Exactly. So before I tell you what happened at my house, let me tell you what actually happened at the crash scene. It was 10:18 at night. By time certain individuals came to our house to question us and to threaten my family, to say it was a helicopter, etc. There was other stuff going on at the actual crash site. My family never left our house. It was raining. It was late at night. There was no street lights. We stayed at our house. My mother was on the phone around 2 a.m. to about 5 a.m. talking to 4 search and rescue helicopters. It's a lot of taxpayer money, just saying, for a hoax or something that's not real. But I want to tell you exactly what happened at the actual crash site, and then I will briefly go over what my family went through at our house after my mom made the 911 call.
All right. Definitely want to hear it. I love this because it's unique. I mean, a lot of times people come on and they tell cases, but this is like a crazy X-Files episode in your backyard. So
and
unique
also,
story.
now that you mention it, X-Files came out in 1993. My story's 1991. The movie Men in Black came out in 1997 or 96. And when I tell the whole story, you're going to hear some preconditioning terminology that kind of says a lot for those movies and things coming out about this story. This is like a real life X-Files. So at the actual crash site, after me finding evidence, released it, I had my cousin was the fire chief of the town. Okay. As firefighters, by time they got the call, it was a Sunday night. They didn't get to the site until like 35 to 40 minutes after my mom made the 911 call. The firehouse was far away. It was a Sunday night. They all had to get to the fire station, get the gear on, get the truck up and running, and had a good 15-minute, 20-minute drive to get to the crash site. So we just lived out in the middle of nowhere. So that's how it went. As they were approaching the scene, they're in a fire truck, and it's my cousin Calvin Hill. He was the chief of the fire squad at the time, and I believe 1 or 2 other guys in the truck with them. And as they're coming up, and as I said, there was marsh on the left of the road heading to this old bridge, this old wooden bridge with iron around it, 1 car at a time. As they were heading up in the marsh and the foxtails, cattails, they saw gouges and damage in the marsh, but no signs of fire, no smoke or anything like that. And once they got closer to that bridge, they saw a Coast Guard cutter boat. It turns out that the Coast Guard, Gloucester County Coast Guard, they patrolled the waterways near the nuclear plant. And if there was any sort of incursion around the nuclear plant, the Gloucester County Coast Guard was in control of controlling the waterways. And this object crashed on technically a waterway, the Lower Alloways Creek. So the firefighters were pulling up. They saw the gouges and the destruction kind of going in the marsh. Once they got closer, they saw a Coast Guard cutter boat sitting in the creek, and there was an armed Coast Guard gentleman on the road, armed, and he flagged down the firefighters, and my uncle, he popped his head out the fire truck window, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And the Coast Guard said the situation is under control, and he ordered them to turn back around. What the firefighters also saw on the marsh closer to the water near the bridge, there was a massive, like 50-foot tarp that was over the marshland, a massive black tarp that was laid out over the marsh. Okay. They didn't question it. They went back to the firehouse, and we didn't have any liquor stores in our town. We didn't have a diner. We didn't have a mini mart or a grocery store. We had nothing. So all the young folk hanging out at the firehouse, because they were always on call, it was the popular hangout. And there was 2 other women that were at that firehouse. After the firefighters got back, they went there and they were telling these 2 women that reached out to me and gave me incredible information, mind-blowing stuff. But they heard the firefighters saying, well, that was weird. And they said the same thing I just told all of you. And the one girl, she's curious. These are country bumpkins. You guys know how it goes in the country. We're all up at, we're nib shitters. We just look for everything. We're all up in other people's business. We got to know everything. So these 2 very curious girls, the first girl gets in her car and she drives to the site. This would have been, the firefighters got there around 35 minutes after. So by the time this first girl got there, this would have been around 50 minutes to almost an hour by the time she got there to see. So about, 50 minutes to an hour after my mom made the 911 call. She gets there. At this point, they have the road closed. To this day, the road is still closed and the bridge is still shut down. It shut down in 1991 after this crash. It's still closed today. Little side note, but she gets there. There's a sign there saying road closed, and she looks down and she sees a tree cutting service truck, a local tree cutting service, not a military, not some like secret special project tree cutting service, just a standard tree cutting service truck there removing trees in the area. And she goes back and she delivers what she just saw. She said, they were removing trees. And once again, the firefighters and the second girl that was there were really intrigued, wanting to know more what was going on. So the second girl, she gets in her car. At this point, she's getting there around like maybe an hour and 30 minutes, maybe more, after the first call was made about the UFO crash. As she got there to the road closed sign, she saw orange lights flashing, and there was a black flatbed truck, not military, just a plain flatbed truck. And on the back of the flatbed truck, there was black tarped objects on the back of the flatbed. This would have put this around, anywhere from 12:40 to almost 1 o'clock. Okay, just give you a time frame when everything was said and done, which kind of suggests to see the flatbed with tarp materials on it. It seemed like they got the site cleared within 2 hours, which, my personal opinion, that's impossible with no street lights, raining, dark, and nighttime. I have no doubt that there was no way they could have got every single piece. I just think they got that core part that I told you that shot straight down. I think that's what they were really trying to collect. I know for a fact, and I've been trying to tell teams and investigators that have the right equipment due to the environment, I know there's still debris out there, and I would love to get a serious team to find some larger chunks, because there's no way they cleaned it up. And as I said, my mom was on the phone around 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Talking to search and rescue helicopters. The problem is, once the search and rescue helicopters got there, the site has already been cleared. Now, that's what I know and what I've documented at the actual crash site. What happened at our house is even stranger. So, my mom made the 911 call about 10-15 minutes later. Our police come. Police come to the door. Where, what, and when. Very simple, less than 10 minutes. They go next door, ask my aunt the same thing, and then they leave. I don't know what else happens to the police. I have their reports. I have the police actually defending my mother and aunt to reporters and stuff that were trying to play the narrative that they were trying to play, and the police actually saying that these are credible adults and we believe that they saw what they saw. So that's important, but we didn't see them after they came and took initial statement. This is where it gets really weird. 25 minutes after my mother made the call, we have 2 black town cars pull into our driveway. All right. This is 1991. It wasn't strange. We just had some sort of aircraft explode behind our house. Of course, the government is going to want to know what's going on. Like, we expected government officials to come there, and, we expected it. We just had some sort of aircraft explode behind our house. That don't happen every day. So they come there. Now, the strange part was, I told you it took 40 minutes for the firefighters to get to the actual crash site. And the people in the car, one of them was from Dover Air Force Base, which was across the river. You have to go all the way up north, go over the Delaware Bridge, then go all the way south to get to Dover. It's about like an hour and 20-minute drive going fast. The closest town next to where we live was a 15-20-minute drive. So this kind of tells me that Dover Air Force Base, my aunt just saw this thing hovering there. I do not know how long this craft was hovering behind my house. It could have been there 20 minutes, could have been there for an hour, it could have been there for 3 hours for all we could have known. We just saw the last 6 minutes of it before it exploded. So they could have already been en route, and how they would get to my house, any government official for that matter, even if it was New Jersey's government officials, there's no way they could have got to my house that quick. So that allows me to know that they already had this thing on radars because it was so close to the nuclear plant, and they were monitoring what this strange object was. So these 2 black cars pull into our driveway. They out the one car, 2 men wearing black suits, black hat, no sunglasses. Yes, they looked human. This is before Men in Black and X-Files. We didn't know what those things were. They came up, and out of the other car, there was a gentleman dressed in clear Air Force attire, little badges, clearly Air Force. I remember it quite well. It was the first time I ever got to see someone in military uniform. It really stuck with me to see that uniform. And I was actually in junior ROTC myself once I got older, so really struck an interest, stuck with me. But I saw them come up to the door. My mom let them in, not thinking anything. They come inside our house through the kitchen into the living room. We had a little sofa and a coffee table, and the 2 men wearing the black suits stood in front of the coffee table, and the gentleman in the Air Force went off to the side of the room. And the 2 men in black suits asked my mother and her 2 girlfriends to sit down on the couch, and they did. And the men in the black suits, which something I gotta say, something really strange, they never asked my mom, these 2 girls, they never asked what they saw. This is where the story gets absolutely insane. I know how crazy it sounds. It don't make no sense. I get it. But this is just what happened. The 2 men in black, call them what they are, pull out a notepad and a pencil. And they look at my mom and her 2 girlfriends back in 1991. Country folk, very religious, Jesus, 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 backwoods country folk, very spiritual people, not UFO wackadoos or fanatics or nothing like that. Very spiritual, religious people. They look at my mom and her 2 friends and say, "Can you draw 3 different kinds of extraterrestrials with this notepad and pencil?" And my mom's 2 girlfriends started cracking up hysterically, saying, "What a bunch of BS, what a bunch of nonsense. This is baloney. What's going on? What are these UFO investigators? Like, what, like, that's what they thought, even though there was a guy from the Air Force standing right there, it was 1991. They couldn't comprehend it, so they're cracking up, and my mom just kind of remained silent. At this point, by the time they got there, it was almost like 10:50 at night. It was getting later. They were all out hanging out the night before until like 4 a.m. They were beat. The 2 girls were in the process, and they said the 2 girls could go ahead and go, and they just really wanted to talk to my mother. So the 2 girls, they get their pocketbooks, they get their coats. It's April, it's raining. They're just getting ready in the kitchen, getting ready to leave, go home after the eventful night. And as they're going ahead and go, they didn't think my mom was in danger. They didn't, th- why would they think that? We just saw something crash. We didn't do anything, like it wasn't even in our mind. But after they left, my mom actually began to draw 3 different kinds of extraterrestrials. How my mom knew what they were, how my mom knew how to draw them, I honestly have no idea, no clue. It was strange.
It was weird.
After my mom drew these 3 different kind of extraterrestrials, keep in mind my mom was like the worst artist you would ever meet. They were chicken scratch, like one step above stick figures, honestly. It was like the worst extraterrestrial you could ever imagine, but somewhere deep in her, I guess she knew something that I was unaware of. I think she was too. At this point, she drew these 3 different kinds of ETs, and at that point, the 2 gentlemen wearing black suits say, "We want to do a regression on you." I know this sounds crazy, but turns out the guy in the Air Force, the military uses regression for soldiers that are in intense combat situations that have post traumatic stress disorder and they can't remember certain intel. They will use regression in order to regress that soldier to get certain information out of them to help them gain intelligence. I know it sounds wonky. It was a surprise to me as well. I would have never thought that our military would mess around with like hypnosis and regression, but they do. And they do have certain individuals that are very, very good at it. Long story short, they took my mother to my old playroom, which was a smaller room. They did a short 5 to 8 minute regression. At that point, unfortunately, I wish my mom wouldn't have done that, but a lot of stuff came out of her. I'm not going to get into it. That's not important. But that was the moment my mom had the realization that she may be in contact with things that we really don't understand after this regression. With that being said, they go back down to the living room after this short 5 to 6 minute where my mom was talking about her experiences and encounters with these beings and going on crafts and being dematerialized. Like my mom graduated high school. The things that like came out of her mouth for being a country high school graduate that had me at like barely 18 years old. She got pregnant during 17. She had me at 18, very young mom. So, like, it's crazy the stuff that was coming out of her mouth. There's no way
And then
she
if
could.
if that craft's in that vicinity, and if it's alien, then they're probably doing weird stuff to people. So that's probably that's why they're doing that.
And I think my mother and my family, we didn't know that. But the men that came to our house, there's a reason they never asked about what my mom saw. What we saw, we just wanted to talk about what we just saw. We just saw something blow up. Let's tell you about it. They never asked that. I believe they know exactly why they were coming here, was because why was this craft behind our house anyway? And it didn't just blow up by accident. It was taken down because it was on our radar, because it was in a no-fly zone since 1976 around nuclear plants. Since 1976, there was a law that passed that within 10 nautical miles, which is 11.1 miles, there should be nothing flying within a nuclear facility. It's a law. So they got radars patrolling these areas. And if anything is flying around those areas, they're going to know. And that's what Dover did. And as you were kind of getting at, I think they had their own suspicions that, there could be some sort of connection between whatever that was and whatever my mom was going through. So my mom, they take her back downstairs and they ask my mom, "Do you have any questions?" At this point, my mom's head just smoking. You can imagine smoke coming out of her ears, completely flabbergasted, not understanding any of this, traumatized by seeing an aircraft explode, then finding out that otherworldly beings are, taking her and communicating with her and creating hybrid children with her, etc. It's a lot to bear for anyone, especially someone that's not in the science fiction and stuff like that. It was a lot for her to handle. And, my mom's main concern being a 22-year-old single mother, and I was 3.5 years old at the time. And also at the time, my 80-year-old grandfather that we took care of also lived there at the house, but he was asleep in the back room. He didn't see it. But these men in black told my mom, "Do you have any questions?" And my mom had 3 amazing questions, simple questions, and any mother will relate to these questions. So the first question my mother asked the men in black, she said, "Are these things dangerous?" A true mom question. First thing a mom's going to want to know, can these things hurt my children? The men in black said, if they were dangerous, do you think we would still be here? My mom said, okay. You know, how do you argue with that? It's a good point. Okay. Second question my mom asked. She said, why don't people know about these things? Logical, great question. The men in black replied, we're doing everything we can by preconditioning, and within the next 10 years, you will see signs of extraterrestrials and UFOs in all sorts of magazines, newspapers, media, songs, radio. Is 1991. They would have said YouTube, streaming services, but 1991, they weren't saying that. They were just saying, our source of media back then. And they were saying that you would hear books, etc., and that they're doing everything they can by preconditioning. And that was the heart of the question. And my mom said, well, that makes sense. And then she started thinking about Steven Spielberg, Close Encounter of the Third Kind, and all that stuff, different E.T., all those movies. And she's like, well, I guess they've already started doing that. And it was 1991, and they told us 10 years. So we thought disclosure would be in 2001. I'm not going to get into it, but something happened in 2001 that distracted the world. Moving on and pushing forward. It seems like anytime we come this close to disclosure, something really bad happens. It just happened again in 2020. Something really bad happened in the world right at the time they were releasing the UAP footage in the Pentagon. Something really bad happened to all of us, and we were all locked down. Same thing happened in 2001, right? Big distractions. Every single time true disclosure will come, there will be a distraction greater, because these reverse technologies are more valuable than anything on this planet, and they know it, and they'll do anything and release anything and distract people with anything to keep this stuff buried in special access black programs and buried deep. But with that being said,
and I wanted to add one thing is I've wondered, and we've heard different stories about them supposedly already having contact with the government and Eisenhower and technology trade-offs, and possibly wondering if missing people go to some in a weird way and things happen to them. And I know you were just on Laura Eisenhower's show. I've interviewed her a long, long time ago, and I know it gets all that secret space and all that can get bizarro. So it wouldn't surprise me if they've already had some kind of contact with something. And then what ties into what's so weird happening right now with the congressional hearings, and then the Skinwalker Ranch and beyond Skinwalker Ranch, where you're having all these military officials on a show on the History Channel that's just gotten bizarro. And then I was telling you about this book, UFO of God, The Extraordinary True Story of Chris Bledsoe. He was just on one of those Beyond Skinwalker Ranch episodes with Colonel John Alexander summoning a UFO with the CIA analyst. And now this book is on Amazon in the Christian section, like 5 stars, and people are practically, going crazy under it. And it's weird. I mean, what are they up to? They're definitely up to something. They're either being very sincere about the phenomenon, or they're faking a lot of crap, or a little bit of everything. But he got on that show, and then when the 4 minutes a UFO came, that was like a ball of light, which I think they're more like angels or light beings, and sometimes they can travel in
they're alive.
They're different things. But what's weird, if you go to Amazon, I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to, and I'm using discernment because I don't trust it either, but it's weird. But the whole book is Christianity about to hijack UFOs. Like, it's so many different layers that you could go with this. But that's a weird book for sure. I haven't read it yet, but the guy was on that show. They even hooked up like neuro scientist technology to do his brain waves during it. Instead, he like entered a zen like trance or something. But the weirdest thing is that Colonel retired dude's there the whole time. So that's what's alarming about all this stuff. So they're definitely up to something for
Yeah.
sure.
And I'm wonderful friends. I was just talking with Laura Eisenhower. She's wonderful, and I love talking to her, and especially with her great grandfather being Dwight Eisenhower. Holy smokes, the conversations we have behind the scenes off camera. Like, I'm a history buff, so it's the closest thing I can get to talking to that guy, which I was a big fan. But what you're talking about with Skinwalker Ranch, I've recorded about 150 of these light orbs that they're ranting and raving about. Just last night, I recorded 5 of them, posted it up on my Facebook. I didn't even have time to put them on YouTube. I see these things all the time. I'm starting to call my house Robert Earl Ranch. Has a nice ring to it. Sounds real southern. Robert
That's
Earl
it too.
Ranch.
Some of the stuff he did, I've done the same thing with this
Yeah.
phenomenon. I'm not saying I could go out there and do it right this second like he does, but in the past, I've had situations where witnesses, and I've said, "Watch, I can make it move," and I swear they
Yeah.
moved. And I've had the same weird. That's why it creeps me out. I get goosebumps talking about it. It's a similar phenomenon that mirrors my own, and now it's
Yeah.
on TV with a bunch of government spooks. So that concerns
With
me.
with cameras, I've recorded a lot, but they've always kind of seemed to like do whatever they wanted to do. But I did have one video specifically where it interacted with me. I was recording it. It's about like 6-minute video. It's cruising along. It gets directly above me, and I tell it for the first time. I say, "Can you power up? Can you brighten up?" And the thing turns into a miniature sun. It brightens up so big, and then it shrinks back down to a little white dot, and I'm gasping. I'm like, "Holy crap, I can't believe it actually responded real time." I've recorded hundreds of them doing crazy things, but I didn't feel that like connection in between me and them. This time I did, and after I caught my breath and I stopped geeking out, acting like a 5-year-old in complete shock, I just said, "Thank you so much. I love you." And do you know, second the "I love you" came out my mouth, this thing does it again, turns into this little miniature sun. So oh, and it was so beautiful, like what you're saying. And that part is freaky. When when we see airplanes going by, we're like, "Oh, they don't see us down here. We're just an ant." But to know that there's some sort of consciousness connection between some of these living crafts,
Yeah. Well,
I
that's like down here at Silver Lake, Florida. I saw the 2 beams of light leave my house as if they were in it and flew through the roof into the heavens. And I was completely sober, and I'll never forget it. But I think they're part of that phenomenon somehow. Like they're, I guess, angelic or ET, whatever you want to call them. But those beams of light have something to do. A shaman, Itzhak Berry, he said the dead can travel in balls of spears. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of other stuff connected to it. Definitely.
Yeah. And before I return to my story, but because you just said it and you said inside your house, April 21st, 2012, I was going through a really hard time. At the time I was a pastor. I was in my apartment, and I actually had a ball of light manifest within my apartment. We had dark blinds on our windows. It was a small apartment, 3 feet, arms reaching from me. This massive, about 2-foot circumference diameter sphere of light, which the insides look like electrical spaghetti water. I don't know how to describe what I saw. It appeared right in front of me. It only lasted 4 seconds, but let me tell you, I was a pastor at the time. I believed in a lot of things. After seeing that thing, that was the first time that I really believed that there is a lot more that we don't see or understand. It like confirmed my faith, my beliefs, and it also confirmed to me that I had doubts I didn't even know I had. I thought I was a true believer. I had no idea until I saw that thing, and I'm like, there's actually like something else going on, like whatever people call angels or demons or great spirits, my native beliefs. And the interesting why I was bringing this up, because you brought up the natives, many years went on, and I wasn't really raised by my native side of my family. I didn't really know my dad until later years. And I just recently met my dad's sister, and we're Abenaki Native American. And my aunt told me that all the women on that side of the family have seen the same light spirit. They call them great spirits. They don't call them aliens. Don't call them angels or nothing like that. They call them great spirits. But it's definitely something dimensional, as in it's there and then it can suck out and go somewhere else. But I just had to bring that up with, you're not the only one, and these things do exist, and many older cultures have stories about these things.
There's a connection with the sun, because earlier I went out. I've been feeling drained, and I went outside and stood with the sun and let the white light fill my body. And after a minute or so, it just felt so weird and bright, like just like encased with that white light. And then I noticed things moving around me. But all this phenomena is definitely connected to the light of the sun, which I guess would be like the source or whatever. It's all connected. But one thing I want to read just is this blurb on the back of this UFO of God book from John Alexander. Do not be surprised if you, the reader, become one of them. Strap in for a wild ride. Colonel John B. Alexander. Become one of them. What, a Christian UFO summoner? Like trying to commercialize UFO summoning now? It's getting weird, man. That's all I know. It's really weird.
Yeah. And
that's cool. That's and it's shamanic. All this great spirits. That's neat for sure.
Yeah. So going back to the story, the third question my mom had for the Men in Black, which is probably the most important question, because it's the only time where they actually brought up anything to do with extraterrestrials or anything like that. The third and final question my mom asked these two gentlemen wearing black suits and black hats that looked human but acted really weird, like the way they held the pencil, the way they did certain things. They were just weird. That's the only way I can describe them, but they looked human. The third question my mom asked them was just finding out, keep in mind, she was just finding out that these beings are in contact with her and taking her and doing whatever with her. She was concerned, and she asked the Men in Black, when these beings have me off on a ship somewheres, what would happen if something happened to my baby, me, I was 3.5 years old, or my elderly grandfather, and they needed my help, and I'm not here to help them? What would happen? Like a good motherly answer. Like, I don't care that I'm being taken up on ships, but what if my kid needs me? What if my grandfather needs me? I don't care about all the aliens and whatnot. I just she really cared about us. And this is where it got weird. The Men in Black said, if anything was to happen to your child or grandfather, they would have you back. And the Men in Black snapped their fingers in such a weird way. And they said like this. And they snapped, and they said they use small little grays that stay behind. That's the most important part. They use small little grays that stay behind. And if anything was to happen to your baby, to your grandfather, they would have you back. And the Men in Black, the way they snapped was so condescending. Like when we're just talking, we're like, boom, real quick. They were just a really oh, look at what we can do. It was weird. I don't know. They're weird.
So they leave gray guards or something behind when you go, in your house or something like that? Is that what they meant?
I don't know, because I don't.
Like they leave someone to watch over or something like that.
Because growing up as a little boy, I don't remember looking in the corner of my room and seeing grays, or was it washed out of my head not to remember that? But I honestly, being real with you, I do not have those memories. I don't remember seeing grays ever watching me, even though my mother was constantly being, in contact with these beings. I'm trying to stay away from the word abducted and taken. It has a negative content.
I'm remembering something that happened with me not too long ago at my fiance Christina's house when we lived there. I let the sun fill my body, like I said earlier, and went back into that house. And she was a nurse, and she's still a nurse, but she was taking care of her grandmother who was transitioning, who passed. But I went outside and stood in that light, and then went back in that house, and astrally I saw grays standing around that house. One was standing over the passing away grandmother. At night, Christina saw one standing over me, and I never saw one. That was the first time I've ever seen anything.
Astrally, you saw
It was like it was like they weren't physical. It was more like a. At first, it's like, am I seeing a weird sun thing because I was in the sun, like a flash from a camera that makes you see weird crap? But then you really look, and it has like a humanoid form, like kind of a pink to it, and it looked at me like this. And then it kind of went away, but it was almost like somehow that sun and that energy gave me like a vision to see that they were in there. And later I had Michelle Desrochers, who does remote stuff, and she's been on a lot of shows on the network, say that there were grays there and things like that. But it was like somehow the sun and that energy gave me the vision to see them. And I don't know if they were, I didn't really feel like they were nefarious. It was almost like they were there because of the grandmother passing away or something.
Yeah.
Like, it was weird, but
well, you bring up a good point. Maybe a reason, even though that's what they said to my mom, that these things were constantly watching me. If they were in a higher frequency, a higher vibration, maybe they weren't visible to my physical eye. Now after the crash, I did have a lot of nightmares. I had a lot of the old movie Aliens. They had like little toys that would come with like the comic books and stuff like that. And after the UFO crash, my family had to take all that away from me. My grandfather was a Vietnam vet, so he made me watch like Tales of the Crypt, Aliens, Predator. Like he was a brute. Even when I was like 4 and 5, he didn't care. He's like, boy, you gotta learn. We would go hunting. He's like, get your hands in that deer and pull the guts out. When I was like 4 or 5, like he didn't want me to be afraid of anything. At the time it terrified me, but now that I'm an adult, I'm really thankful for him, raising me that way, because it really prepared me for life in ways I can never imagine. But I definitely had a lot of nightmares and a lot of weird dreams at that time that I just kind of try to block out. But what you just said about, maybe they were just in a different frequency, and that's why I couldn't
they
see
were
them.
saying that they leave some behind to watch over the area while the person's gone, like guards or something, like.
Well, think about it. What if like that person has a loved one or a spouse, and they have them off somewheres, and that loved one or spouse wakes up and they realize their loved one isn't there? They're gonna freak out, call the cops and everything. It's gonna be a problem. So I mean, it makes sense. But long story short, that was the third and final question, and my mom said okay. The Men in Black said, do you have any other questions? My mom said no. She had enough to process just with those 3 questions and the whole
Those are
situation.
Good questions. That's some pretty good questions. Yeah.
Simple questions, yeah. And then the Men in Black said okay. And they said, now tomorrow, news agencies, UFO investigators, media outlets, TV shows, media is going to come here, and you will say it was a helicopter, or we will take your son away. My mom said, okay, I understand. They left, and we never heard or saw them again. And my mom did exactly as she was told.
It's scary.
And here's the kicker. My family remained absolutely anonymous. My aunt next door had to take her phone off the line, off the wall, because she was getting calls from Hollywood, many other TV shows, and she didn't want to get charged long distance. We were poor country folk. We were backwoods people. We were not your normal people, and we didn't want to get long distance calls, so we had to take off the thing. The Philadelphia KYW 3-channel news came out, show sightings, unsolved mystery. Bud Hopkins was involved, Richard Butler, a lot of others. I think even John Mack knew a little bit about it. A lot of crazy stuff was going on. MUFON came out multiple times in the following months. They did regression and hypnosis sessions. I'm actually great friends with George A. Filer, which is the East Coast director of the Mutual UFO Network and the National UFO Center. He shared my story and has given me additional information, but when trying to find the people that worked on my family's case through him, they're all dead. They're all gone now. So I can't find the tape recordings of my mom's regressions that they did. I cannot find anything on what MUFON did, which is just kind of suspicious. There's certain like
No,
little gaps.
any Bigelow activity? Because I've heard stories he'll show up and with his wallet and take it, and next thing you know, it's reverse engineered. I knew I don't talk to her anymore, but Chase Kowetsky. She used to be on the MUFON Star team, and she would tell me she had to go to UFO crash sites and report to Robert Bigelow, and she didn't like it. But I know when stuff like that happens, he used to show up like clockwork. He had some MUFON stuff going on.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. It wasn't Robert Bigelow. I did get a lot of names of the MUFON people that were involved. Probably some of the biggest names, as I said, was Richard Butler and Bud Hopkins. They were
cool.
Big names at the time. And the thing is, my family remained anonymous. Even in the MUFON articles, their name is anonymous. Mrs. W, Mrs. H, Hill, my aunt, Mrs. W, Mrs. White, my mom. I know who they all are. But the fact that the men in black told us, the reason they told us all these people would be coming, who do you think is tipping off the UFO community? Who do you think is tipping off MUFON? The TV shows, Unsolved Mysteries, Sightings, they planted the helicopter narrative, and they told my mom to follow along. Every mainstream TV show that you see about extraterrestrials and UFOs are backed and funded by three-letter agencies and these men wearing these black suits working for these special access programs that are out of the privy and the knowledge of the United States government. They're their own separate thing. And Congress and Senate, they're getting sick and tired of it. And stuff is about to go down soon. And accountability will be had for these people that threatened a 22-year-old single mother. My mother, they would take me away if she didn't say it was a helicopter. Well, I'm out here saying the truth now. They know where to find me. Arrow in the Pentagon knows exactly who I am. They know where to find me. I'm not afraid of them. And if they want to threaten someone and take someone away, I'm right here. They know where to find me. They can come take me away anytime. I would love to have a lovely conversation with them.
And I definitely know there's those black type agencies. When I was having all my UFO sightings in Georgia, a silent, weird craft came over my house with a cockpit that made no noise. It was like a helicopter with no blades. And a man that looked like Top Gun goes, and it shot away. And me and a friend saw it. And I don't know if maybe the UFO...
When was this?
This was in the 90s, 96. I remember Hellbop and all that stuff. And it was when I was having the pyramid craft, and it kind of seemed like some of the phenomenon was attracted to me, possibly. It seemed like that. I don't know if it was just me. I don't know.
This was in Georgia?
Yeah. I had a friend tell me, Jeffrey, you're attracting this here, as we looked at weird stuff in the sky that was weird. But at the time, that weird craft came out, and a man... It was like a big cockpit, almost like a helicopter, but with no rotors or blades, like something out of a sci-fi movie. He goes, and I swear it just shot up and left. No one ever came to me face to face. Thank God. That would be scary. We were partying, doing all kinds of drugs and going crazy. There's a party at that house I was doing. My dad had just died, and he told me if I ever did drugs, he would shoot me, so I never did them. But when he died, I got the rave scene, Marilyn Manson, Metallica, just went crazy and never messed with any of that stuff before until he died. He was kind of abusive when I was alive, so I guess it was me, releasing. But at that time, multiple witnesses, my mom who saw the pyramid craft at that same house. But the most interesting thing about why I know those agencies exist, because that's what that was that came out and goes, and shot away.
And it was a human, like a person in there.
He had like apparatus on. I mean, I'm guessing that's what it was, but I really don't know. I'm thinking it was just like a human, like a soldier or something.
Yeah. And we do have those crafts.
The UFOs.
Yeah.
And that's why they came out. And they, for some reason, at one point, another weird thing that happened to me here in Florida, I had said I was going to turn my phone off, and someone put a weird $2,000 credit on my phone bill, and no one I knew did it. and I asked the phone company to send me a check of it, and they did. I shut the phone off anyway and like went on a shopping spree and paid my land tax. But some kind of agency put on that credit on my phone to keep it on so they could listen. And the only thing interesting I was doing was a show and weird UFO shows. So there's definitely those agencies. I know it
Wow.
the hard way.
There, and a lot of people think that they like will come to your door and knock and confront you face to face. That's not what they do. It's weird little backdoor stuff like what you just described.
It's giving me goosebumps.
Well, I don't think they have enough courage to come to face with you, Jeffrey, or myself, and to ask us face to face, and they weasel behind the scenes doing stuff like what you just said. That is so weird, man. That's wild. That's wild. I've been blessed, I guess, other than having all my social medias taken out and YouTube censor, blocked out of Google algorithms, even though DuckDuckGo and Yahoo and Bing, they do wonderful, but Google has cut me out, and Google owns YouTube. So, and yeah, they've been holding it down.
I've had some weird things happen. I had a PS5 account get hacked. Someone took it over completely and started ordering stuff, changed my email this month. Someone did it to Walmart. And then I had a weird incident where a guy said that I called his house and he called me to see who it was. And they say it's spoofing. Lambs told a story about it. But I don't know. It just felt really weird this month. Like, am I on some weird hacker hit list or something? That's happened this month, but I don't know if it's related to any of this weird stuff. It may just be, I know there's a lot of crazy hacking crap going on right now. It's worldwide.
I hope your technology stays safe, brother.
Thank you.
I'm putting some manifestation over our technologies. Protect it.
Let me mess with my PS5. Come on, man.
Oh, man.
Right? But yeah.
So
go ahead to whatever you want to get into next. I love it. Definitely.
Yeah. So after that happened, as I said, all these news media people came out. MUFON came out a bunch of times. But there's certain weird things with MUFON. For example, they came to the crash site 12 o'clock at night. There was no street lights. You couldn't see anything. It was completely dark. And they went to go look for evidence 12 o'clock at night, midnight, in an area with no lights to look for a crash area that don't line up. That's what it says in the article. Doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they would do that. I've told a few people
come up or anything about bodies or anything with weird alien, like anything like that. Like were they bodies or anything?
Not from the witnesses to the crash site. I did not get that information. The only thing with extraterrestrials would be through like my mother and her encounter with these beings she called tall whites. They were very tall, 7 to 8 foot extraterrestrials, what some people call grays, but they weren't gray. Their skin was very, very white, like super white. And they were very tall, and they were, doing hybrid programs, harvesting her embryos, eggs, and creating offspring, and taking her up to interact with some of her offspring hybrids, I guess people call them. I don't know. And my mother also talked about a lot of different beings as well. She had pet names. As a kid, she explained them to me as like, she calls some of them large snakes, reptilians that we called today, but she called them large snakes. She had ones that were very spiritual. She felt very loved around them, and I guess they would give her wisdom and stuff. She called them the blues. They were very tall. Once again, they kind of look like gray extraterrestrials, but they were a lot more humanoid, but they had a blue electricity coming off of their skin. Like almost like a bluish gray, like a bluish glow coming off of it. Weird to explain, but she called them the blues. I think like some people call them Octurians, but I really don't care about fancy names. They're just names. It don't
Like
matter.
Avatar, the blue big aliens.
Yeah, sort of like that, except the skin was glowing blue. They weren't blue. They were almost like a gray.
Translucent.
Yeah, but they had like electricity coming off of their skin. If if that makes any
Well,
sense. Weird. She saw
yeah,
one she called the Nordics. These tall, blonde, white, platinum hair, Nordic looking human
Vikings, baby.
beings.
That's right.
Yeah, and she also saw one she called praying mantises. She called them praying mantises. She said they look like giant humanoid praying mantises of sorts, just like praying mantises. And she saw a few others. I'm not gonna get into it. The only one she had a star system for are the little zetas. She called the little ones. She called them zetas. The little gray ones.
Yes.
That's the only one that had any sort of like star reference in their names, but she called them Zetas with a S plural.
Yes.
But that was it. And she always told me I have nothing to be afraid of, honey. They'll never hurt you. You have nothing to worry about. Um, Anything in the future, don't listen to it. You have nothing to worry about. Like my mom, like really told me what was up, and she really drove it in my head, and I'm glad because right now in the UFO community, Jeffrey and Wham, I'm sure you do too. There's a lot of confusion going on right now. I'm so glad she ran what she did in my head and taught me, but she never told me too much. She didn't really tell me a lot until I was older. Actually, when I was 24 and I saw that light being, I called my mom, and that's when she said, "I've been waiting for you to have your own experience. Now I'll tell you everything." But she always babied me, always tried to protect me, and she would only tell me little bits and parts. And unfortunately, I had to see a lot of things I wish I didn't have to see, pertaining to my mother and her encounters. A few of them I witnessed and myself physically, and it traumatized me because she didn't talk to me about certain things, and oh, that's a lot. Hard
Well,
for a little kid to understand.
yeah. Well, from what I've seen, I think there's beings here that help us. And I think there's because I have had an experience where when I first started, I had trouble getting interviews, and I said a prayer and had a UFO sighting, and then the next thing, and witnesses saw it, and the next thing you know, I was on the phone with Lloyd Pye and Nick Pope and Stanton Friedman. It was almost connected. But I think that there are beings here that are nefarious, possibly. And like for instance, on the Skinwalker Ranch show, they keep using all this technology, and something there keeps messing with it and messing it up and shutting it down. And then they say the UAPs and the hearings can do that to radar craft and stuff. So there's probably beings here that do, obviously abduct people, but they don't want everyone to know that they're turning their blind eye to it. That the stuff that's bad that's going on with some of these beings, that some of them may be eating us for all we know. I've heard weird stories like that. I mean, it's certainly possible with the cattle mutilation stuff. I don't know what the deal was with that Peru story. That got really weird. Like, I know it ended with them saying it was miners with jetpacks, but that even sounds crazy.
That's insane. When have you ever heard of a miner with a jetpack?
I don't. Where do you get a jetpack at? I know they have them.
That's as good as swamp gas and weather balloons.
Yeah, that was a weird story. And the miners cut people's faces off, like they were showing bodies with no faces all over the place.
Yeah, why would a miner do that?
A weird story for sure.
And I know with the one thing I've learned to put things in perspective to everyone that's listening out there, after talking to a lot of people that have seen, reverse engineered technologies, my good friend Michael Herrera, one of the whistleblowers from the DC event, Michael Herrera, he was just on the Sean Ryan show, and I just got done interviewing him and 3 other whistleblowers that have testified in front of Arrow and Congress and Senate and SCIFs, etc. His story back in 2000, 2010 in Indonesia after a tsunami hit. Him and a platoon of 6 Marines went out in the jungles and they came across a craft, a huge saucer in the middle of the jungle. All of a sudden, a bunch of Ford F-350s pull up, brand new, unmarked black trucks with storage containers on the back that had oxygen, which I'm not going to get into it. I know this is a family-friendly show, but when you have containers with oxygen on it, there's only so many things you could be transporting in that. And the platoon of 6 Marines and Michael Herrera, he was the lead on the team. They were all held at gunpoint by these men with English-speaking accents. They were not Indonesian. They were not cartel. They were not like Mexican or nothing like that. They spoke perfect English. They were good old boys wearing all black. Their weapons were far outranked from the Marines. Their techniques, they absolutely knew how the Marines would operate. That's how they got the drop on them, which for them to know that means they're being trained by someone that knows something. And these are these black projects, and they are transporting certain things that I don't want to get into, things they shouldn't be transporting. It's a sin against humanity. And this is the point I'm getting at. When people see our UFOs, the government will blame it on aliens and extraterrestrials. When people see extraterrestrials and actual UFOs, they blame it on our advanced technologies. You see the game going on here, right? So weather balloon, that was an actual extraterrestrial. When they're telling you it's extraterrestrial, it's actually our government, because if you want to do clandestine operations and you're transporting things that if the public found out you're transporting, we would have no more faith in our government at all to find out that these special access projects are transporting these poor souls, etc. Okay, it's a major issue. And they're doing it under this disguise of aliens and UFOs. And then when someone does see our reverse technology, and they say, "Oh, I just saw alien stuff," they call them crazy, and they divert the conversation. That's
So
what's
you
going
mean
on.
like, I'm trying to figure out what you mean they're carrying that's nasty. You mean like my lab's victims or something like that? Like something like that?
Human trafficking.
Okay.
Sensitive topic. Didn't want to.
It's okay.
It's a big cancel.
Sure. My mind was going everywhere with that. But
No.
We can just keep it that. Yeah.
And also because it was a tsunami. Anytime like a great fire in Hawaii, anytime there is a mass catastrophe, they come along and skip up children, because when they go missing, they just blame it on the storm, earthquake, the fire, or whatever. And they can just take whoever they want and blame it on a catastrophe. They did it in Indonesia. They did it in Christchurch, New Zealand. They do it for all natural catastrophes. It's sick. It's wrong. And they use these crafts to do it, because if anyone sees it, they'll just say it was aliens or UFOs. And that's the only time they will say something is extraterrestrial, is when it's actually them. And when it's extraterrestrial, they'll blame it on everything, weather balloons, swamp gas. They'll just come up with any excuse.
I remember in the Betty and Barney Hill case where they like saw the aliens were talking like in German or something like that. I think it was.
Yeah, isn't that strange?
Yeah, that's weird. In America, like
that's weird.
Nazi space stuff going on there, but that's strange.
The Dark Fleet, right? Yeah. It's all connected,
and that's why they don't want it out, because they're complicit in it. They're they're doing it. It's illegal.
And it's very valuable technology to have, especially if you're using that technology against a major group of the world's population, and they're unaware of these technologies. It would become a very useful tool. Could you imagine if Wham, Jeffrey, or I, if we had these technologies and no one knew they existed, the things we could do? We could really change and shape a lot of things. Hopefully we won't be buttheads about it and try to help people with those technologies. That's what any good person would do. I would try to like heal my friends that lost a finger or have heart problems, use that technology to heal them. Unfortunately, we know they're not using these technologies to
I
help
would
us.
harass villagers with my jetpack. I'm just
Yeah, yeah. All right, Peru guy.
Yeah, we're going down there. But yeah, it's insane on so many different levels. This stuff.
Yeah,
It's just too much.
it's sad and it's layered and there's a lot going on, but at the end of the day, I think that's why it's so important. People like myself and like the whistleblowers I work with, we just say what happened. I let people decide whatever they want to believe. I just tell people, and I think the main key takeaways from my UFO crash story, coming from the Men in Black and etc., it's that these special access programs, these individual Men in Black, whatever you want to call them, G men, they are the ones that provide the narrative. The narrative that was fed to the mainstream was a helicopter crash. And then you know what the Philadelphia News did when they interviewed the family 2 times? They tried to take it from a helicopter crash to a meteorite shower. And it was cloudy and raining that night. And my mom was like, no, meteorites don't just hover there in the sky and explode and crash. Like, but that's the whole trickle down of the mainstream media and how they operate and the
What year was
narrative.
that? Did you say again? What year? 1991? What year?
1991, yes.
And that's when in the 90s is when a lot of my pyramid weird stuff, seeing it in the vicinity with witnesses and stuff. So
It was a very active year. Actually, April 21st, 1991, there was another UFO incident. Heathrow, I'm probably saying it wrong, over in England. Heathrow Airport. Heathrow, thank you. Heathrow Airport. There was a flight that was coming from Italy to there, and they almost had a collision with a UFO, and it was very well documented. That story pops up more than my story does when you type in April 21st, 1991. Also, my friends Rob and Ben from the Edge of Wonder podcast and stuff, they interviewed me and they did some homework. And there was a picture of a UFO over an ancient structure in Mexico that was taken April 21st, 1991 as well, they found, which was really interesting. That was something I did not know. There was a lot of activity. My good friend Anthony S. Player, he has unidentified S4. He had a triangular UFO encounter in Staten Island back in 1993, I believe. It was a very active time for a lot of things, for sure, no doubt. And it doesn't surprise me to hear that you had those experiences back then, for sure.
A lot of mine too. I've seen them over me, and if I've ever been taken or abducted, I don't remember any freaking thing at all.
Same.
But I've seen them so many times, you have to wonder. Or I've wondered if they work with you astrally or something. Like, I don't know. If I've been taken, I don't remember a damn thing. But there's been many times those things have been right over me, like they're there for you. So a lot of people want me to get hypnotized. I don't really want to. Maybe I don't.
Neither do I. I'm terrified. I'm terrified. I don't trust it. I'm scared of it. And
that David Jacobs Emma Woods thing. Look that up. That'll scare you not to ever want to be hypnotized.
Yeah. And I work with a lot of hypnotherapists and regression people that do that, and they're amazing people.
You have to really be careful.
I tell them there's certain things I want to forget. When you've seen what I've seen, trust me, you want to forget. I don't want to remember. I want to forget. It's been kind of my mission. I don't want to remember more. And not just extraterrestrials and UFOs. We all go through a lot of hard stuff. I know for a fact, we've all had some hard times in our lives and things we wish we could forget. And I do not want to revisit that. I want to focus here and now. Forget the past. I can't change it. I only can focus here and now, move forward, and help others. And that's what it's all about.
Definitely. I think it's definitely about raising awareness and consciousness about it. That's a big part of it.
For sure. But yeah, that's pretty much the Lower Alloways Creek incident. If anyone's interested, I have a documentary
Give us your
that
links and stuff, and yeah, anything you want to link.
yeah, Robert Earl White, Order of Light on YouTube. If you type Robert Earl White, it'll come up, and the first playlist on my page is my UFO crash story. I made a few videos. I also had a former security guard that worked at the nuclear plant in 1977 that witnessed a UFO over the nuclear plant, setting off all the radiation alarms of the plant all the way back in 1977, the same nuclear plant that I was referencing. My story, I got that in there. I talk about Maelstrom Air Force Base as well, the nuclear connection, gamma rays, gamma rays, gamma rays, lightning, nuclear, volcanoes. You will always see UFOs. Gamma rays, gamma rays, gamma rays, gamma rays. I can't say it enough.
Are you familiar with Robert Salas? I've interviewed him about that.
Oh,
he wrote a book about the UFO.
Wait, you interviewed him?
A long time ago, yeah.
Wow. Oh, yeah,
out a book
Maelstrom
and-
Air Force Base. Absolutely, I know Robert Salas.
That's a good one. I interviewed him many moons ago. I have it somewhere. It's on my hard drives, but yeah.
And that's why I'm saying, why isn't he speaking in front of the Senate committee hearing? That's the guy that needs to be there. He has more evidence, validations, backing up, radar signatures, documentation. You know, the crews that came from the Air Force to inspect both NORAD sites after that encounter, their documentation, working on it. There's so much evidence with the Maelstrom Air Force base and the NORAD sites, two separate sites where all those missiles were shut down. That's a case worth looking into, and they just keep ignoring it to hear secondhand stories from Grushy.
Have you ever heard of the Fort Benning case that happened with all the soldiers and stuff in Georgia? Fort Benning,
No.
Georgia, with John Vasquez. Vasquez, he's passed away now, but if you get a chance, look it up. Let me see what I can find. It's Fort Benning, Georgia, UFO case. John Vasquez. He's a friend of mine. Military soldier John Vasquez talks about a bizarre 1977 UFO incident at Fort Benning, Georgia, and basically he speaks of 1,300 men being mass abducted, of injuries sustained in the battle with the UFO. And this is a famous UFO case that's been around for a while. So here's Kevin Smith, who's passed away. Not the guy that did Clerks, another dude that used to do UFO. But it's a famous thing. There's a book about it and everything. But a whole crazy, like soldiers freaked out, wanting their mothers and saw aliens all at the space. It almost sounded like psychedelics and psyops or something, but it could be aliens too, all the above. I don't know, but that's an interesting one. Fort Benning, Georgia, UFO case. Do some research and look it up. You'll go down a rabbit hole. And here's a weird thing with him. One day on the phone, he was at that the base, and he said he thought someone stuck him with a needle. And he was always in this case, up in everybody's crap about it, like investigating and stuff. Joe knows him, Joe Montado, who owns the network. And he told me on the phone he thought someone stuck him with a needle, and then years later he passed away. But that's a weird case. If you get some X-Files sojourning, that's a weird one.
Yeah,
for sure. That's pretty famous. But maybe
and
not.
You said that was 1977.
Yeah, let me look here again. It's been a while. Yeah, 1977
Okay.
UFO incident at Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay. I think in 76, like I said, I'm good friends with George A. Filer, which is retired Air Force Major of Intelligence. He chased UFOs over England when he was stationed over there, but his job was debriefing higher personnel about extraterrestrials, UFOs, those in the need to know, those that actually had encounters. It wasn't like he was going around saying this, but 1976, here in New Jersey, we have a joint base, and there were certain details of this story I'm about to tell you, and the reason why George was filling me on this information was because there was overlapping things. But 1976 here in New Jersey, there's a joint base. It's Fort Dix Army Base and McGuire Air Force Base. They both bases basically are separated by a single fence, but they're on the same plot of land in the center of Jersey. And two MPs, military police, were in their old Jeep and they were going through the woods on the outskirts of the thing, and they saw lights flying around. And at one point, they witnessed a small object standing in front of the road, and with their headlights on, they stopped the Jeep and they got out. And the one MP saw a small being about 3 foot tall, big, large black eyes, slight brown skin, come walking towards him. He freaked, he panicked, he pulled his 9mm, I believe it was. He fired 6 rounds at it, hitting it a few times. The small being took off, and there was a fence that was dividing Fort Dix Army Base from the McGuire Air Force Base and the runway. And this little being, somehow, some way, they were chasing it, and it ran through the fence. Somehow, some way, it just went right through the fence. They had no idea. It fell dead on McGuire Air Force Base right at the end of the runway. At that time, I got to hear stories from other military personnel that were on aircrafts that were landing at the time that being fell dead and was shot. And they had to stay on the plane, but they turned their radios to the MP station to hear what was actually going on. And I got to hear a lot of additional information that hasn't been shared publicly, but this was legit. And Wright-Patterson Air Force Base came out and cleaned it. And the number one thing George A. Filer told me, he said, what struck me with your story that made me really believe you, and I haven't really shared this, after that extraterrestrial was killed, they called out tree cutting services that removed trees. Remember my story about the tree?
It's interesting because usually when people shoot at them, it doesn't do anything to them. But you see it go through the fence and then it dies. That's I guess they kind of phase in and out.
It had to be. It had to phase out to get through the fence, but it's almost like it. And the messed up part, like the being wasn't doing no harm. The MP was terrified and shot out of reaction. The poor thing, I honestly feel bad for it, but I don't know if I should be saying this. In the area that it was seen is where they store nuclear weapons underground that the public shouldn't. I shouldn't even be talking about it right now. But yeah, that's why they were there to begin with, not to scare a bunch of MPs. They just saw a couple gamma rays coming. Trust me, these beings know where we are hiding our nuclear weapons. Got to make that clear.
It seems like when those kind of things go off, it has repercussions universal. And I even get worried that if one goes off, it'll like eat your soul or something on an atomic level where you don't even have a soul anymore or something.
And that's the thing. It doesn't even need to go off. I believe some of these beings and crafts, the way they see things, they may be able to pick up on those gamma rays I was talking about. And they may, like how we have like thermal and full spectrum cameras, etc. They probably have technologies and certain kind of, cameras, if you will, more advanced than that. But to pick up on certain frequencies and, gamma ray signatures, on the radiation.
On the Skinwalker Ranch show, they keep picking up this 1.6 gigahertz frequency. And that's getting really weird on there. That show is the weirdest crap. If you ever get a chance to see it, everyone, you're like, what the hell is this on TV? It's just getting crazier. Like they ended the last season saying pretty much they think there's a whole base there and they don't know if it's from an ancient civilization or like a modern military under the ranch. And they're showing thermal scientific technology crap I never heard of and showing it. They can't drill through it. Like it's just getting crazy.
The thing with Skinwalker Ranch, I've been telling everyone since day one, going back to the Bigelow guy, that Robert Bigelow, which I talked to him once. He was a decent guy. He actually he checked out my story. Not much. He just gave a little message, and that was good enough for me. I was like,
You try to
okay.
buy it.
Well, I mean,
I want to
nothing.
know about Jock Valet on Skinwalker
Oh.
Ranch with Robert Bigelow. I don't know if they've said anything, but I want to know that.
Yeah, but the thing with Skinwalker Ranch is, when you have a TV show, if they would just come out and tell you what they already know, they would have only had one episode. They don't want one episode. They want 15, 20 seasons. Therefore, you got to milk it, spoon feed,
I'm wondering
little
if
bits
they
at a
have to
time.
bring out like a real alien on there for everyone or something like that.
Well,
The next
they could have solved everything in the very first episode and just dug underneath ground and found what was under there. They don't want to do that because they want to milk it out and get as many seasons as they can, showing you the little lights I see flying in the sky all the time, and just little this, little that, to get 15, 20 seasons in their contract to get paid. Otherwise, they would just, in episode 1, they should have just dug underneath. They know what's under there. They're just milking it and playing dumb. They all know. They know exactly
like
what's under there.
Psyop or something that you don't know what's the truth and what's not on there. It's definitely so many government officials involved, and just it's definitely spooky whatever's going on with it.
Yeah.
It's part of their agenda, whatever that is, that ties into these hearings. That Travis guy, that's the main scientist, the astrophysicist or whatever, he used to work on the UAP congressional hearing. He couldn't tell them till the 4th season, and he revealed it, and some of them seemed upset because he had to hide it from them, but now he could tell them. But these congressional hearings, he used to be the chief scientist, I think, with the old Bigelow stuff, and some weird UAP group that was 4 years ago or something, and he couldn't tell them until the fourth season. So that was kind of weird.
Yeah. Very suspicious, and it's funny that they're so secretive about ATIP and these other UAP task force and stuff when they're not doing anything anyway. Like, he didn't find anything in doing that is more revealing than what he's done on a show for History Channel.
Is a lot of it, though, they don't know what the hell's going on any more than anybody else. But if they know that, if they've worked with these bees before, they obviously know some of them may be taking people and doing weird crap to them, and abuse or whatever. It's just so many layers.
Yeah, I think we just all want the truth, right?
Whatever.
Can agree on that.
At this point, yeah.
That's all we want. Or some sort of idea or perception of the truth, at least just a little bit.
So what's the next phase for you with all this?
Well, I've been doing a lot of stuff with my good friend, Eric Hecker. He's the Antarctica whistleblower that people probably have seen trending all over online. He worked for Raytheon contractors in Antarctica with the Ice Cube Neutrino Detector program and other scientific programs. The one caused the earthquake in Christchurch by accident, them firing up this science project in Antarctica at the McMurdo Station, south of New Zealand. That's where he lived and worked for over a year. He has a website called deciphering.tv. I've been helping him, and I'm working with a lot of other whistleblowers with credible military backgrounds, helping them go through their stories and trying to make a platform for other service members and experiencers, which I've done in the past. I've interviewed a lot of different people from all different backgrounds. Had my good buddy Joe Joyce. He's like the 3rd heavyweight boxing champion in the world. I have all sorts of people that come on the show to talk about their experiences, not always about extraterrestrials and UFOs. I think it's so interesting just to hear people's life journey, to hear what they've learned, what they've went through. I really enjoy. I'm sure that's why you probably do what you do. You enjoy hearing people's stories. You get to learn so much from it.
It's puzzle pieces that hopefully lead to something.
I always say we all hold a piece of the puzzle, and when we put all the puzzle pieces together, we get to see the big picture.
I've said this similar, definitely, same thing.
Only way we get to figure this whole thing out, but I plan on doing a lot of UFO live streams because I record UFOs all the time, but I'm setting up a camera where I can actually live stream and watch the skies so people watching the videos can see UFOs in real time. I don't want to record them, then upload a video. I want everyone to see what I see real time, no editing, raw, right there. And I know I can do it. So that's my next big hope. One of my plans. I got a few interviews. I was just talking to like Laura Eisenhower, a bunch of the other people as well. Going to have them on the show, and doing a couple other little projects with other creators I work with in the community, doing all that. So my YouTube, Robert Earl White, you can find it, all my stuff on there. And yeah, got a couple little things up my sleeve, still in the works. Going to take a while, but yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Do you give us your links and then we'll close out so everybody can check it out.
Yeah, so on YouTube, it's Robert Earl White, just like my name down there. So you can see it right there. Oh, pointing the wrong area right there. And Robert Earl White on YouTube. My Facebook is Robert Orasi. Orasi, Orasi, because Facebook deleted my first Facebook after I did an interview with Laura Eisenhower. They just, after 14 years, deleted my entire Facebook. I got on their radar. Thanks, Laura. I always, she knows this story. I always kind of blame her. And she's like, oh, I'm like, it's not her. It's the deep state, Laura. That's why I tell her. But yeah.
Facebook's S list. I understand.
Yeah. But now that I'm Robert Orasi on Facebook, my Facebook is doing better than my old account where I had way more friends, had it for 14 years. Now that I'm not Robert Earl White and I'm Robert Orasi, which is my dad's last name, which should have been my last name. So my government name isn't really my name. It's a wonderful thing. Anyway, but yeah, so my page is doing way better now because, you know, they know to censor Robert Earl White. They don't know who Robert Orasi is.
Is that how do you spell your last name on Facebook? I'll look it up.
Orasi. Orasi.
Do you go to beard festival contests?
Oh, beard.
Beard.
I should. I actually, my girlfriend was talking about one that takes place in Tennessee, the big one. I believe it is.
They seem pretty cool. Like it'd be fun.
Yeah.
I just had a goatee and that was getting long. I was just getting sick of it. I was like, I'm tired of it growing in my mouth. I'm just shave it off and look like Uncle Fester. It'll be back in a few weeks.
Uncle Fester. Yeah. This has been growing for a while, and it seems like it never really grows. You know, it just takes forever. This has been like 7 years, 8 years going.
Nice.
Well, man, quite a while.
We appreciate it so much. It's been a great show.
Yes.
You've helped carry us. We're tired. I'm sure Wham's had a long week. I know I've had like a long week.
I've had a really long week. Yep.
It's been a summer from hell. What it feels like. Just
hot.
One thing after another, like just crap happening. But we appreciate it so much. It's been a great show. Thanks so much, man. And we'll definitely get you on again. I loved it. Thanks. And I believe you're sincere, and definitely I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. And sorry, Wham, we didn't get to talk as much. You were so quiet down there.
No, it's all right. You carried it all.
You did. You did it. She's tired, but sometimes it's like doing a seminar, and I just try to guide and we listen. But that's how it is. And other times we'll be like, blah, 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 blah.
Oh yeah. I was arguing with the guy last week. We got into it, so.
But,
I really appreciate it.
Much. Thank you so much, Robert. Take care and have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody for listening. You're listening to United Public Radio 107.7, and next week's the Weird Creature movie features B-movie weirdness. Like he has some weird movie about meatloaf and an abominable snowman that looks like the cheesiest crap ever that you should watch stoned. I haven't seen it yet, but just weird movies like mystery science theater kind of stuff. But we appreciate it so much. Thanks everybody. Have a good weekend. Thanks Robert. Thanks Wham. We'll catch you later. I got to watch the new What We Do in the Shadows. I need some comedy.
Go for it.
All right. Take care everybody. Good night.